That night, Ladson teased you mercilessly about the gift from your boyfriend. You had made sure to tuck Annie in early so he was blissfully unaware of the whole ordeal, as you didn't want him throwing a tantrum after being denied a taste of the wine, which, as Ladson said, was too good to waste on his uncultured, childish taste buds. You drank a fair amount yourself, working your way up to a solid buzz. It didn't take long for you to get there, as you had not actually really drank much of anything alcoholic in quite some time, and your tolerance apparently wasn't what it used to be. You drank up until the point where your words started to run together, just on the edge of slurring, when Ladson decided that you had had enough, cut you off, and sent you to bed like the good friend he was. That was probably for the best, anyway. You were at the point where you could still sleep this off and be good by morning, which was fair, considering you didn't know if Poe wanted to take you back into the cockpit right away, or if he needed a few days of rest and recuperation after that last mission. But that night, as you fell asleep, you were distracted by the alcohol and your shield was not as strong as it usually was. You'd always tried to meditate before you went to bed to keep the shield strong in your mind, but this time, you had just sort of drifted off to sleep without taking any sort of precaution. You knew it the moment you shut your eyes as you laid your head down against your pillow and opened them again to find yourself back in your first bedroom aboard the Starkiller base. The room was dark and dimly lit, and although it had always looked that way at night, this time it seemed almost eerie. You glanced towards the living room door, as if expecting it to open before your eyes darted to the darkened bathroom doorway, as if expecting some sort of monster to jump out of it. The air seems charged with unknown danger, and you sit up in your old bed, listening to the rapid thump of your heart that beat in rhythm with a steady pulse of silence. There's a sudden, yet oddly familiar knock on the door leading to the corridor, and your heart jumps into your chest as you silently slide out of bed and make your way across the floor. It's cold, and you can feel a draft from some unseen vent blowing wisps of chilled air against the tops of your bare feet. You don't even take a moment to pause as you put your hand on the doorknob and open it, knowing that you would find Kylo there. He's there, standing there in his full armor, his mask just the same as you remembered, but the corridor outside the room was pitch black, and he might as well have been standing on nothing, suspended in the darkness. You allow him inside and shut the door quickly, taking a few steps back, but never turning your back on him, just like you used to. "You allowed me in," he says softly, his voice rumbling with a familiar distortion, and you cross your arms uncomfortably over your chest. There had never been a time when you had denied him access to this room, and you honestly weren't really all that anxious to see what would happen if you did. "If we're going to talk, take off the helmet," you tell him. "You know that was always my rule when we were in here." "So it was." He complies immediately, unlocking the mechanism at the helmet's base as he drops it to the floor with a clunk. If you're not mistaken, he looks a bit more unsure than he had in your previous visions, and you decide to make a blind grab for the upper hand. "You seem rattled," you say, keeping your voice level. "I'm guessing their strike must have been a success." Kylo's dark eyes flash for a moment, and suddenly you wonder if that was maybe the wrong thing to say. "You were in on it?" "No," you say quickly. "No, I overheard some information. I just knew it was happening, not any details." He seems almost disappointed by this, and you idly wonder if he wanted to use you as a double agent to weigh in on the resistance. You knew right then that you would have never agreed to that, no matter what he promised. Instead, you try to change the subject. "Why are you here?" Now it's his turn to look surprised. "You called out to me," he says softly. "I could feel you wanting me." You hesitate and try to think back. You had been drinking and talking to Letson about Poe, about training, about stuff on the base, but your thoughts had never specifically touched on Kylo, which, granted, was a bit of a change. Could it be that you were finally getting over him? Or had you pressed that part of yourself down into the back of your conscience, where it was subtly still yearning for him without your conscious recognition? In the end, you suppose it didn't really matter either way. It seemed you were bound to him regardless, especially considering the fact that you could apparently conjure him just by falling asleep. I want to find you, you say at last, making a final decision. Tell me where you are. You hear a small voice in the back of your head urging you on, and you decide to listen to it. Annie misses you. He wants to see you. Kylo hesitates for a moment, watching you closely. You didn't seem so resolved before. Because I was trying to do the best I could for Annie, you tell him. Not for me, but Annie really misses you. He needs you. He needs his father. Kylo appraises you, studying your face, trying to determine if the conviction in your voice was genuine or just an altered facade. And you? You bite your lip nervously, blushing as you look away. You wanted him. It almost fucking killed you to admit it, but there was a part of you that truly was bonded to him. A part of you that would never be able to give him up. I love you, you whisper without looking at him, and you can't hide how defeated you sound. At least there was a bit of honesty in that. Kylo takes a few steps towards you and brushes your cheek gently with the back of his gloved hand. Slowly, he tilts up your chin with one finger, forcing you to meet his eyes as he says your name. I love you too. It's more than you can take, and you decide to just give in to it. You kiss him back, your hands tangling in his hair as he pushes you back onto the bed, pushing his large frame down over yours. You groan and wrap your legs around his waist as you buck your hips up into him. He kisses your neck and you roll your head back to give him better access as he plants a row of fervent kisses across your jawline. You grab his face in both hands and force his lips to yours, kissing him intensely. Right now, your mind feels slightly numbed, and you know that the alcohol you drank earlier is still buzzing around in your brain, helping you rationalize whatever this is. But you don't want to rationalize it. You don't know how much of your thoughts you'd be able to read, and so you don't think. You just let yourself be overwhelmed with your repressed emotions, letting your mind drift back to the place where you knew all the awful things you had done. I meant what I said to you, you say urgently, whispering against his lips. Remember when we were in your room, on your bed together, back on base? Remember how I told you I don't care what sorts of terrible things you've done as long as you treat me well? That's still true. I still want to be with you. For a moment, Kylo looks like you just slapped him as he just sits above you in stunned silence. Do you mean that? Yes. The word is off your lips in a rush, and Kylo kisses you back now, urgently, taking off his gloves as his warm hands find their way underneath your shirt as he runs his fingertips across your bare skin. Your entire body cries out for him as you roll your head back, pounding your hips up into his, desperate for contact. Kylo looks like he's about to take things one step forward when suddenly he stops and turns his head to the side as if he's listening for something. I have to go. No. If he doubted your sincerity before, this time it was clearly genuine. He just offers you a sad smile as he takes your head in both hands and kisses your forehead. This is your test, he tells you urgently, looking imploringly into your eyes. The general of the resistance knows where I am. Get her to tell you my location. Take Annie and come to me. Wait, you say quickly, grabbing hold of one of his hands to prevent him from leaving. Why do I need her to tell me? Why can't you just tell me where you are now? His lip quirks upwards into a smile, and when he speaks again, it's with a voice you've never heard him use before. That way news of your betrayal will sting so much more. Your jaw drops slightly, but he doesn't give you time to process any more of a reaction. He holds both hands against the side of your face as he presses his lips into yours, kissing you firmly. Do this for me, he says as he pulls away, and then we can be together. I promise. Your eyes blink open, and you shake your head as if to clear it. No, that was wrong. All wrong. He was not your Kylo anymore, if he ever was. That voice that he had spoken with hadn't been his at all. It belonged to some darker side of him, and although you didn't know how much he was simply playing with you and how much he meant, you had to find out. You quickly slide out of bed and get dressed as the conversation plays itself over and over again in your mind. He wouldn't have promised you anything either. He knew how much you despised promises. You had reminded him to stop making empty promises to you at least a dozen times before it finally sank in. It's why the last time you had seen him, he hadn't actually promised to return to you as he left. Had it been a slip, or had he truly forgotten? Either way, it didn't matter. It felt good enough when he was touching your skin, when his lips were pressed firmly against yours. That still felt good and familiar, but after these past few years, you could sense it. He was not the same Kylo anymore. He wasn't yours anymore, if he ever had been in the first place. But that didn't mean you didn't want to see him. Ladson and Annie are still asleep, and so you quickly adjust your lightsaber in your belt as you head out the door into the corridor, closing the door as quietly as you can behind you. You hear footsteps approaching from around a corner of the narrow hall, and you quickly look up in time to see Poe heading down the hall towards you. "Hey," you say quickly, walking in his direction but showing no sign of slowing down. "Piloting lessons in a bit? I just have to talk to Leia about something first." You walk past him, and Poe quickly takes a few big strides to catch up to you. That's when you realize this is the first time you'd actually seen him since he left, and now you acted like you couldn't even be bothered to greet him. Honestly, maybe that was for the best. You didn't need any more drama than what Kylo had already put on your plate. "She sent me to get you," he says quickly. "We're all in the command center." "Good," you say with finality. This wasn't something you really wanted to talk to Poe about, but suddenly you can't help but feel at least a little bad that you were taking your current frustrations with Kylo out on Poe. It wasn't fair to him. "I'm glad you kept your promise," you tell him, and he just looks at you in confusion. "You came back in one piece." "I don't believe I ever promised you that," he replies good-naturedly. "I generally make it a rule not to make promises I know I may not be able to keep. He's still walking and talking, but you've physically stopped. It honestly felt as though your heart had literally stopped beating for a moment, and your feet snapped together as you processed what he said, staring straight out in front of you. There was no way. There was no fucking way. "What?" Poe asks, stopping as he turns to face you. "What's wrong?" Everything was wrong, because for at least the second time to your knowledge, Poe had said or done something that was eerily applicable to the current situation. The first time was when he had come to collect you and Annie, literally the morning after you said that you didn't want to be on that planet anymore. Sure, maybe that had been a coincidence, but why had he voiced your same disdain for making promises only mere minutes after that helped prove to you that Kylo wasn't who you thought he was? Granted, you had brought it up, and it was possible that you were thinking way too much into it, but that didn't seem likely. The Force would guide you if you let it, but right now it felt like it was pulling you in two different directions towards two totally different people. "Nothing," you reply quietly as you shake your head and start to walk forward again, picking up the pace to a brisk stride. "Come on, let's go." "So, do you know what she wants to see you about?" Poe asks. "She said it was urgent I get you immediately. Did something happen while I wasn't here?" "You were in the middle of debriefing, right?" you ask, and Poe nods his head in the affirmative. "I think she needs my help with something." "Help?" Poe asks, raising his eyebrows in surprise. "So you're joining the team after all?" You tilt your head to the side and consider this, but otherwise say nothing. You were on your side, and if you and the Resistance's motives happened to go hand in hand, then that was fine by you. The last time you had been in the command center, it had hardly been crowded, but it was now, packed with scores of people of human and alien origin alike. Leia sees you as soon as you walk in, and she immediately comes over to you, placing both hands on your upper arms. "I'm glad you're here," she says as she shakes her head. I don't know. "He reached out to me again," you tell her, keeping your voice solemn to reflect the overall demeanor in the room. "Who?" Poe asks, but you both ignore him. Leia sighs and she rubs the skin on your arms with her thumbs as she thinks. "Just tell me what I can do," you tell her firmly. "He's running scared," Leia confesses. "We attacked his battle group, but he managed to escape. He always seems to be one step ahead of us. As soon as we move in, he gets a head start and heads off. There are only a few major players here, and we believe we have General Hux cornered. If we can take Ren as well, we believe that we can use him to find Snoke and end this once and for all. But if he keeps staying one step ahead of you... You let your voice trail off as you realize what she wants you to do. General, with all due respect, Poe says nervously, and you can tell by the look of surprise that crosses her face that she is not used to having him disagree with her. Not your decision, you say immediately, refusing to look at him. Leia turns to you, and a soft smile tugs at the corners of her lips. He called out to me again, you explain. He wants me to take Annie and go to him. The smile slips off her face. He wouldn't tell me where he is. He said you knew that I had to find out from you. That sounds like a trap, Poe says firmly. Did he say why? Leia asks. He said that he wanted the news of my betrayal to sting so much more, you say softly, averting their eyes, and Leia sighs as she lets go of you. Poe is looking between you and Leia, more confused than ever, but you refuse to look at him directly. How long have you been in contact with him? Poe asks. Rey was working with her to create a mental shield to keep him out, Leia says, turning to you. I thought it was working. It was, you reply. I was out of it last night, and... Your eyes skirt to Poe's for a moment before looking away. True, it had been his wine, his gift, but none of you could have predicted that it would allow Kylo to get into your head. It was no one's fault. It just happened. He seemed scared, you add. Nervous, not as confident as before. He has good reason to be, Poe murmurs. Leia turns to you. If you think you can do this, we'll send you in. Do you feel comfortable navigating the Lambda shuttle yourself? I can, you reply without a hint of hesitation in your voice. To be honest, you would probably need slightly more instruction on that, but you were sure it was nothing you couldn't handle. You hear Poe's sharp exhale from behind you. We can't send a child. We're not sending Annie, you tell him. Just me. Commander, Leia says firmly, gently reminding him to check himself. He just runs a hand through his hair and nods quietly. I can do this, you tell Leia. I'll try to distract him, disable him in some way so that the next time you attack, you can capture him. If he escapes, he'll probably take me with him. If he does, I might be able to feed you his coordinates from wherever he takes me. Leia looks down at the lightsaber in your belt. If you go, you won't be able to bring that with you. No weapons, you agree. I can tell him that I wanted to show up first, that I want to scope things out before I bring Annie. He's already expecting me coming anyway, so it's not like I'm showing up again from out of nowhere. Poe lets out a deep breath. Okay, if you're going to do this, we should at least think things through. What if he decides to kill you as soon as he sees you? He's not going to kill me, you say firmly. I'm his best shot at getting close to Annie. And if he imprisons you? Poe asks. I'm much stronger than I was before, you tell him. Rey already told me about how she escaped the base, and Finn's been teaching me how to shoot and fire a blaster. Worst case scenario? I escape and try to make it back here, or just lie low until you guys attack and make my move then. Once we go, we'll start planning another strike, Leia tells you. You shouldn't be there for more than a few days. See that? You tell Poe. They only starved me for about 10 days last time, and I managed to get through it then. I'll be fine. You know it's supposed to make him feel better, but you can't help but feel as though it had the opposite effect of what you had initially intended. You've seen me fight. You know I can hold my own. One-on-one, he reminds you. You're going to be far outnumbered. You turn sharply to Leia. You said that Hux and Kylo were separated, correct? She nods. What about Captain Phasma? Current whereabouts unknown, Leia tells you. We believe she may have been spotted on the other side of the Outer Rim, and we are currently investigating that lead. That my only concern is Kylo Ren, you tell him, and I very much doubt Snoke would be with him. No, Leia shakes her head. No, he wouldn't be. Then that settles it, you tell them. I'll go in and I'll distract him and try to disable him when you attack. He gets captured alive, and we all head back here to celebrate. Nice and simple. Poe looks like he wants to argue, but he just nods on his lower lip as Leia nods her head. We'll give you a few days to prepare. Head down to the medbay when you can for an evaluation, and then make sure Finn gives you a little more practice with the blaster, and make sure to spend more time training with Rey. He is going to try to access your thoughts, and we can't risk you letting him in on this conversation. You can't hide a smirk as you remember how you used to practice getting inside Kylo's head, how you used to practice simply keeping him out. Not a problem. I can handle it. She turns to Poe. Is the fighter ready to fly yet? Poe shakes his head. Not yet, General, but the Omega Command Shuttle has identical controls. Good, Leia replies. Then train her how to dock in the Command Shuttle. Poe just nods his head in the affirmative as Leia reaches out and squeezes your arm. You can do this, she says. There is strength in you. I can feel it. The First Order is weak right now and disorganized. If we can bring him home, we might be able to end this once and for all. You incline your head in a curt nod. I won't let you down, General. She nods at Poe before she walks off, and you turn and walk out of the command center as you hear Leia start to address everyone in the room. You know she's probably going to fill them in on her plan to essentially use you as bait, but you don't want to hear it. You don't want to see the looks that you know everyone is going to give you. Once outside, you walk a little ways down from the corridor before you lean your back against the wall, digging the heels of both hands against your forehead. Could you do this? Could you really do this? At first you thought you definitely wanted to see Kylo again, thought that maybe you could get more answers by seeing him, but suddenly you weren't so sure you even wanted answers. Suddenly, this all seemed like a terrible idea, and you almost wanted to run back inside and tell them that you had changed your mind. Until Poe steps out, and that hardens your resolve more than ever. You had to do this. Your affection with Poe, your secret little romance, it was cute, but in the end, that's all it was. It was just a passing attraction, nothing serious. You had a job to do now, a duty to the Resistance, and you couldn't let your childish affections get in the way of that. Come to tell me to back out now? You ask as he approaches you, pulling yourself back into a standing position. No, Poe says firmly. I came out here to make sure that you were okay. You feel off balance for a moment, but it's so brief you can barely be sure you felt anything at all. I'm totally okay. Why wouldn't I be? Poe gives you a dubious look and you shake your head. I'm the only one who can do this, so don't try to talk me out of it. I'm not, Poe says, and you look up at him. I know you're strong enough to handle yourself, and I know nothing I say is going to keep you from doing this. He shakes his head. The General is right. If we capture him, we may be able to finally put a stop to the First Order. You take a deep breath and let it out slowly. Ironic that the person who wanted no part in this war to begin with might be the one who ends up finishing it. He studies your face. You can do this. You let out a small, disgruntled snort as you look away from him, but he reaches out and places a hand on your upper arm, holding you securely. No, I mean it. You can do this. I know this can't be easy for you, but you agree to do it without hesitation. You have my confidence and my respect. That should have probably meant a lot coming from the commander of the Starfighter Corps himself, but for some reason you just can't see him that way. You never have. Nevertheless, you let a blush creep over your cheeks as you look back up at him. Well, it's good to know you're not worried about me at all. He looks taken aback. Just because you have my support doesn't mean I'm not worried about you, he says. I still don't want to see anything happen to you. You bite your lip, the wheels churning in your mind as you process his tone, and you decide to take it one step further. Are you concerned about me? Of course. He cracks a grin, and in the back of your mind, you're expecting him to follow it up with, because that's what friends do for each other. But it doesn't come. Maybe it was supposed to be implied, you're not sure, but suddenly you realize there's a very real possibility that you may not actually make it out of this alive. You hesitate for a moment as the advice that Latson had given you floats back into your mind. Stop looking towards the future and start living in the now. At the time, that advice had simply been in regards to waiting around your entire life for Kylo Ren to come back. But now the situation had changed. Now you were definitely going to see Kylo Ren again, and you weren't sure you wanted to. Now you may have been opening yourself up to the fact that there was something else you wanted. Someone else you wanted. And you didn't know how to deal with that on top of your impending mission. Your eyes meet Poe's and you make a sudden decision. You didn't want to think about the fact that there was a very real possibility that you could die, but there was, however, the idea that you wouldn't feel the same way about Poe when you got back. Your crush had been filled with a sudden giddy rush of excitement every time you heard his name. And honestly, you didn't want that exuberant feeling to end. You wanted to float in the limbo of what could be, drawing it out for as long as possible until the eventual became the inevitable. But you would be going, and soon, and you couldn't help but think that your time with the Resistance might seriously be coming to an end. If that was the case, it was best to just make the most of it before your life was irreparably changed forever. If it was eventually going to happen anyway, I might as well just do it now. You reach forward and put a hand on either side of his face, not allowing yourself time to think or doubt as you press your lips firmly against his. You don't give him time to react. You count to 3 in your head quickly before you drop your hands, turn on your heel, and literally run in the other direction, your arms pumping at your sides as you run as fast as you can away from Poe and the possible future with him that was slipping away from you. But were you running towards? You hadn't the slightest idea.